Hello again, Harry Potter fans. Welcome back to our page. We are continuing on with Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always, by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are with Chapter 10, Trials Unforeseen.
Chapter 10, Trials Unforeseen. Chapter text. Do not lose your temper. I won't. Answer their questions with as few words as possible. All right. Stay calm. If they try to badger you, maintain your cool. Okay, Harry said, annoyed. He and Dumbledore had gone through this before, twice. It was the 3rd of February, and the slow-moving Ministry had finally decided to have a trial for Peter Pettigrew. Harry, Ginny, and Ron had been ordered to attend and give witness to the events that had happened the day after Christmas. I won't lose my temper. I'll answer their questions with as few words as possible, and I'll stay cool. I promise. Me too, Ron said. Ginny echoed him. They were in Dumbledore's office preparing to travel by flue to testify against Peter Pettigrew before the Wizengamot. Harry had his best pair of robes on and had even attempted to flatten his hair. Ginny had pulled her hair up into a messy bun. She looked fresh-faced and very young. Ron, however, had not bothered with his appearance as much as the other two had. Ginny pointed her wand at him and somehow managed to make him look neater. Why'd you do that? Ron asked. I don't care how I look in front of those Ministry nutters. I know you don't, Ginny assured him. But Mum will. Ron stared at her, aghast. Mum's going to be there? Why didn't you say anything? Ginny gaped at him. How long have you known Mum? Do you really think that she'll let us be witnesses in the most important trial of the last decade without being there? Ron groaned. I was hoping it would be a closed trial. It is, Dumbledore assured him. But you are an underage witch or wizard, and it is almost a given that your mother will be there. It is frowned upon in the Wizengamot question young people without their parents there. Listen, Dumbledore said. We're leaving in just a few moments. I do not like the fact that the other members in the Wizengamot voted to question you at the trial instead of accepting a written account, as they did your brother Percy's. Do not expect to answer easy questions. I will protect you as best I can. Professor, Harry interrupted. Don't try to protect us too much. That'd look odd, wouldn't it? We'll get through this. Be careful, Dumbledore said as they lined up in front of the fireplace. Harry took a handful of flue powder, stood in the fireplace, shouted his destination, and spun outside of the protection of Hogwarts into the Ministry, where his welcome was uncertain at best. Harry, dear. Harry blinked the soot out of his eyes and turned to find Mr. and Mrs. Weasley standing just behind him. Hi, Mrs. Weasley, Harry said. Hi, Mr. Weasley. Come to watch the trial? Of course, Mrs. Weasley said. I can't have my youngest children up in front of the Wizengamot without being there. What kind of mother would I be if I let them go it alone? Thanks, Mum, Ginny said. She walked over and gave her a hug. We're a little nervous. Mrs. Weasley opened her mouth to say something comforting, but it dropped open when she saw her youngest son. Ronald Weasley, you're here to stand witness in a very important trial, not slouch in your common room. What are you wearing? Never would have thought you'd be so stupid. I didn't know you'd be here, Ron said defensively. Perhaps this was the wrong thing to say because Mrs. Weasley grabbed hold of his ear and pulled him forcefully around the corner. Harry could hear Ron sputtering, Mrs. Weasley whispering loudly, and several bangs. Ron rejoined them, looking sheepish and somewhat neater. His robes did not look as though he'd slept in them the night before, and his hair was so tame that it reminded Harry a little of Malfoy's sleek blonde hair. Aren't you glad she didn't see you before Ginny did some damage control? Harry muttered. Ron shuddered. Come on, everyone, Mr. Weasley said. We don't want to be late. Courtroom 10 isn't even reachable by the lift. We got a bit of a walk. As the 5 of them, Dumbledore had headed to the courtroom as soon as he had stepped out of the flue, trooped through the atrium, and got on the lift. Mr. Weasley kept up a steady, light-hearted commentary about the Ministry, the history of the building itself, and the various departments contained therein. He clearly sought to set their minds at ease, and Harry was pleasantly surprised to find that it worked. What's this place? Ron asked when they reached the long corridor that led to the Department of Mysteries. The place where the prophecy is held, Harry thought to himself. Where Sirius died, where we fought a battle because I hadn't learned a clemency. That's the Department of Mysteries, Mr. Weasley said. The people who work there are called unspeakables. No one knows what they get up to, hence the name. Ron nodded. Mr. Weasley's words gradually tapered off while they headed down the long flight of stairs, and they eventually walked in silence toward the court. The last time Harry had been here, he had been on trial for underage magic. He'd used the Patronus charm to fight the Dementors that Umbridge had set on him. Umbridge, who had most likely written that article, the one that had cast him in a suspicious light before he had even known, in this timeline, that the odd stuff that he sometimes made happen was magic. Before he'd known about his parents' murders, what his scar had come from, and even Voldemort's name. He wondered if she would be there. Probably, he thought glumly. Still, he straightened his shoulders and attempted to flatten his hair once more before he walked across the threshold. It was crowded with grim-faced witches and wizards, all staring at the center of the room, where Peter Pettigrew sat, chained to a chair. As soon as he entered, though, all eyes turned to him. Harry gulped. Ginny took a deep breath, and he wished he could take her hand. "The witnesses are here," said a woman with a stern voice. She had a monocle pressed to her eye, and Harry recognized her as Amelia Bones, the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. "I move to begin the trial of Peter Pettigrew." Pettigrew whimpered as the other witches and wizards murmured their accord. "Miss Ginevra Molly Weasley," Amelia Bones said. "Approach." Ginny walked forward steadily and stopped when she was about a meter away from the dais upon which Minister Fudge, Dumbledore, Amelia Bones, a young, dark-haired wizard, and, Harry's stomach clenched, Dolores Umbridge all sat. "Describe to us the events leading up to the attack." Ginny described it flawlessly. If Harry had not known any better, he would have believed that she was being perfectly honest. "And you were speaking Quidditch?" Amelia Bones asked. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "I had no idea what was going on. It was reported that you were cursed by the man in the center of the room," she pointed. "Can you verify for me that it was indeed him?" Ginny turned her head and stared at Wormtail, who was now quivering so hard that the chains that bound his hands and feet made faint clanking sounds. "Yes," she said assuredly. "He's the man that appeared." "Thank you," she said. "You are released. Ronald Bilious Weasley, please come forward." Harry began to relax. They were doing fine so far. Amelia Bones had not asked probing questions and had taken Ginny at her word. Ginny sat next to him and gave him a very small smile, so quick that he barely noticed it. The questions put to Ron were nearly identical, up until the point that Ginny had been hit by a curse. Harry silently cheered as Ron's voice remained steady. He had clearly taken Dumbledore's advice to heart and said just enough to answer a question and without raising the possibility of more. "So then I used that disarming spell that Professor Lockhart taught us," Ron finished. "And then Harry used magic to tie him up," he said easily. Hem, an all too familiar voice. Harry had to bite his tongue to stop from groaning. Ginny tensed up. "If I may ask a few questions?" Dolores Umbridge said in her sickening sweet tone. "Of course, Under Secretary Umbridge," Amelia Bones said formally. "You claim that Harry Potter used a charm to tie Pettigrew up with magic," Umbridge said. "Where did he learn this charm?" she giggled, a little tinkle of the sound that made Harry want to strangle her. "I do not believe that it is taught to second years." "Don't say anything rude, Ron. Don't do it," Harry prayed. He needn't have feared. "Oh," Ron said. "Harry and I looked through my older brother Percy's spell books." "Why?" she pressed. "Isn't learning the required spells enough of a challenge?" "Well," Ron said, "we're both pretty good at defense against the dark arts, and we wanted to learn more about them." "No other reason?" she asked. She sounded as though she did not believe him. Ron's ears turned bright red, and Harry squeezed his eyes shut. "Well," he looked over at his mother. "My brothers, they like to have a laugh. We thought we'd surprise them." Harry could see heads nodding in the crowd. He wondered if Fred and George knew that their reputation extended beyond Hogwarts. Despite the situation, Harry wanted to grin. "Where did you practice these spells?" "In the common room," Ron said promptly. "Mostly when we knew that they were out flying or at dinner. It was over the holidays." "You practiced on each other?" "Yeah," Ron said slowly. Harry felt a sickening drop in his stomach, though he did not know why. "What is going on here? Do you often allow Harry Potter to tie you up using magic?" Was that? Did she just say what I think she just said? Harry gaped at her. Several members of the Wisengamot gasped. Amelia Bones whipped around so fast that her monocle flew out of her hand and hit Ron on the shoulder. Ron bent over and picked it up. Harry could see that his fingers were trembling. He was probably trying to stop himself from doing something he would regret, like attack Umbridge. That was, Madam Bones said furiously. But Molly Weasley stopped her. What exactly are you insinuating about my son? She did not shout, precisely, but the warning and threat was made perfectly clear. She had her wand out, though it was not pointed at Umbridge. Yet, this is a trial, Umbridge said primly, though Harry could see her ugly lips twist in something that might be a smile. The urge to hurt her thundered through his veins. And you are not permitted to speak. I am his mother, Mrs. Weasley said forcefully, and I will not allow you to. Molly Weasley is quite right. Dumbledore spoke for the first time. Harry looked away from Umbridge and caught Minister Fudge look furtively and fearfully at the older wizard. As chief of the Wisengamot, I declare that line of questioning inappropriate. You have our apologies, Mr. Weasley. You may go back to your seat. Ron didn't say anything, but turned and walked toward him. His face was as bright red as his hair, and he had clenched his fist so tightly around a wad of his robes. Harry could only be thankful that he had managed not to draw his wand, that his knuckles were white. There was a flurry of motion and whispering so loud that Harry felt he was sitting next to a large nest of snakes. The only difference being, of course, that he could not understand what they were saying. Amelia Bones conferred urgently with the minister, nervously tapping her returned monocle on the desk in front of her. The only two not speaking to anyone, Harry noticed, was Dumbledore and Umbridge. Dumbledore was watching Pettigrew carefully and did not appear to notice Harry's stare. Umbridge, however, was looking at Harry, and suddenly he was absolutely positive that she had asked Ron that question to humiliate him, and any doubt that still lingered about the author of the article seeped away. The look of satisfaction on her face proved it. Harry James Potter, Madam Bones sounded flustered. Please approach. Harry looked away from Umbridge and walked forward. His heart was pounding in his chest. He only hoped that he could control himself as Ron had done, but if Umbridge was allowed to question him, he did not know what would happen. Describe the events, please, she said. He did so, careful to keep his voice steady and clear. Dumbledore was right to remind me twice not to get angry, he thought ruefully. He did not even look at Umbridge, but stared straight at Amelia Bones. He could tell, however, that she and the others on the dais, and perhaps Ron and Ginny and their parents, were the only ones who were actually listening. The other witches and wizards were busy whispering to one another. I do not support the line of questioning Undersecretary Umbridge took. She looked troubled. But do you understand why it is a concern for the ministry that you show knowledge of spells that ought to be beyond a second year? Harry decided in a split second to play dumb. No, Madam Bones, I do not. She looked surprised. Surely you are aware of the prophecy? I should have known that this was as much my trial as it is Wormtail's, Harry thought bitterly. Yes, I am. Then you know that the prophecy states that you are in possession of a terrible power that he who must not be named does not know. Yes, Harry said firmly. And you do not think that this would concern the ministry? Well, Harry said slowly. I'm only 12 years old. Madam Bones, Dumbledore said quietly. Mr. Potter is not on trial based on a prophecy made before he was born. Mr. Potter is not, in fact, on trial at all. Harry began to wonder if he was actually here or if he was having nightmare. He pinched himself surreptitiously. Wouldn't that have been nice? Recent allegations. Madam Bones said delicately. If you are referring to the Chamber of Secrets, Dumbledore said. I stand by what I said before. Mr. Potter is most definitely not the heir of Slytherin. I am afraid that I cannot permit this questioning to continue. We have a matter of Peter Pettigrew to decide. Question Mr. Potter further, if you wish, but ensure that it is related to the matter at hand. Harry felt grimly satisfied that Dumbledore had enough power to halt this, and even happier that the minister had not once questioned his authority. In fact, Amelia Bones looked chastened rather than angry. She nodded. Very well, she said. No further questions, Mr. Potter. You may leave now if you wish. May I stay? Harry asked. He looked over at Wormtail, who was nibbling on his fingernails. He betrayed my parents. Her expression softened. You may. He returned to his seat, not even daring to look at Ron and Ginny. He knew, without even having to look, that they were both furious. The trial went on without a hitch after that. Amelia Bones questioned him, and he admitted to everything in a shaky voice. He told the crowd of witches and wizards how he had betrayed Lily and James Potter, how he had been tracked down by Sirius Black the next day, and how he had transformed into a rat after he blasted the street, killing the Muggles, and leaving behind a finger to ensure that the Ministry thought him dead. Then he described how he had found the Weasleys and stayed with them. And in December, he had finally grown tired of his ruse and had attempted to escape. The vote deciding his guilt was unanimous. Within 2 hours, Peter Pettigrew had been given a life sentence in Azkaban. Harry was relieved that Dumbledore's conviction that the Ministry would not immediately throw him to the Dementors to receive the kiss held true. Weak-legged with relief and residual anger, Harry made his way back to the atrium with the Weasleys. No one said anything, to his relief. He suspected that Mrs. Weasley was still in a dangerous temper. Now, she said finally when they stood in front of the fireplaces, you three get back to school safely. I expect plenty of people will have questions for you. You don't have to answer them if you don't wish to. Don't let the twins harass you. Write to me if they do. All right, Mum. Ginny smiled at her. Mr. Weasley hugged his children and shook Harry's hand. I've got to run. Remus Lupin asked me to owl him. He knew that I'd be there. Be careful. Goodbye, dears, Mrs. Weasley said. Harry had never been happier to leave the Ministry. Not just for his sake, but for Ron's, who was about to explode. I'm going to kill her, he snarled once they had reached the sanctuary that was Dumbledore's office. You have no idea how close it was. Can you believe? He broke off, apparently too enraged to continue. What happened? Snape asked. He had apparently been waiting for them. Before they could answer, Dumbledore appeared in the flames and stepped out, brushing soot off his scarlet robes. Umbridge accused Harry of buggering me. Ron said, I'm dead certain that she's the one who wrote that article, Harry said. She set out to humiliate me, us, today. Snape looked at Dumbledore. Is this true? I think you are right, Harry, Dumbledore said. From what you have told me, from what I know of her, and what she said today, I am certain of it. And yes, Severus, she very clearly insinuated that Harry and Ron have a sexual relationship. What were her exact words? Ron pretended to think. Oh yeah, do you often let Harry Potter tie you up using magic? I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it. Snape stared at him. And you didn't kill her? You have more control than I thought. No, all three of them behaved with admirable control, Dumbledore said. During Umbridge's questioning, and when Harry was questioned, they spent as much time asking about the prophecy as they did about Pettigrew. I stopped it both times. I can't say that I didn't expect that there would be some allusion to it. I did like Dumbledore told me, Harry said. I tried to use as little words as possible, which is why I was able to step in when I did, said Dumbledore. Had he given more information away, such as attempting to reassure them of his intentions, I would have had to allow it. Why is that? Ginny asked. It would have been off topic anyway. Harry could have left them an opening, Dumbledore said. If he had, there would have been nothing I could say, legally speaking, that would have had any authority behind it. There are different rules for witnesses than there are for criminals on trial. They are not allowed to questions step outside of the bounds. But if the witness himself mentions it, such as, Harry, if you had said that you were not the heir of Slytherin, or if you had used your experience with the Philosopher's Stone to attempt to convince them, then Madame Bones would have had every right to pursue it. Good for you, Harry, Ron said. You kept your mouth shut. I was too worried about killing Umbridge, Harry said. Well, Ginny said, at least that's over. We know why they insisted on having Harry, Ron, and I testify, instead of letting us just send a letter like Percy did. They wanted to question Harry. Indeed, Dumbledore said. Professor, what about Sirius? Harry asked. They're going to free him, right? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Yes, they are. They were arguing about how they were going to recompense him for his time spent in Azkaban as an innocent man, and for the fact that they did not give him a trial, as I left. I dare say that Sirius will be a free man within days, if not hours. How delightful, Snape said sourly. Harry looked at him. That kind of attitude is exactly why no one in the Order of the Phoenix trusted you, he pointed out. It's true, Ginny nodded. If I can manage not to kill Umbridge, Ron said, then you can be civil to Sirius. Snape scowled, but he didn't hand out real detentions to them for stating the facts. Harry hoped he thought about it, because he would not tolerate enmity between two of his best allies. The Room of Requirement provided enough space for the six of them to practice dueling each other, for which Harry was very grateful. He stood facing Ginny and knew that she was in just as foul a mood as he was. Two students had been petrified the night before, despite all their efforts to avoid that happening. Dumbledore had been the one to protect the students last night. When the coin had heated up and Ginny had left the common room, Harry had sent a Patronus to Dumbledore. They were working outside of the original timeline now, with the hope that it would cause the events that were to happen come sooner. Dumbledore had cast a very subtle charm that should have caused any student or teacher to immediately realize that they had something to do in the opposite direction. It would have worked had two students not been snogging in a broom closet, now a Ravenclaw, named Jacob Hallwell, and a Hufflepuff, named Emily Gareth were laying in the hospital wing, waiting for the Mandrake potion to restore them to themselves. At least they're only petrified, Harry whispered. She nodded. I know. I still feel awful about it, though. Harry glanced over at Neville, who was dueling with Ron. He felt bad for being surprised that Neville was picking it up quickly. After all, he had been one of the fastest learners in Dumbledore's army. But Neville had never displayed that kind of power at any time until his 5th year. It amazed Harry that Neville had only needed confidence all that time. True, Ron was not really trying. It wouldn't have been fair, not to mention highly suspicious. But Neville now had a firm grasp on both Expelliarmus and Stupefy. Great, Neville, he called when the other boys sent Ron flying back on some cushions. I did that trick with the wand you showed me earlier, Neville said. Hermione looked over. You're a really good teacher, Harry. I didn't think we'd be able to manage this, to be honest. Thanks, he said. What do you say we call it a night? We don't want the Ministry to get suspicious, now, do we? I can't believe what happened to you. Hermione flared up at once. They should have been pleased that you knew how to do that spell. Harry avoided Ron's eyes. Not that there was a chance that he was looking at him. What Umbridge had said had not remained a secret at all. None of them had said anything, but some of the students, like Susan Bones and Marietta Edgecombe, had had parents at the trial. It had spread around the school like wildfire, and the taunts and sneers, combined with the fear and suspicion, had contributed to Harry's foul mood as much as the fact that students had been petrified. Umbridge's plan to humiliate him had certainly worked. That bitch, he thought. It had been 3 weeks since the trial, but it had felt like 3 years. Please let the rumors die down soon. His anger propelled him to the Gryffindor common room, where he was met with both laughter and nervous looks. This did not help. He shoved past a couple of first years and stomped up the stairs. Going to bed, Potter? Someone asked, laughing. Probably an especially brave 7th year. And Weasley's going to? You better go up there too, Longbottom. They may need a chaperone. SHHHHH, someone hissed. Yeah, shut the hell up about my brother, Levins, Fred said loudly. Or, do you want to see what we'll do to you? George said just as loudly. Ron slammed the door behind them so hard that it almost shattered the wood. He rummaged angrily through his trunk and pulled out his pajamas. He was muttering something under his breath, but Harry couldn't make out what he was saying. What's that? He asked. Just fantasizing about how I'm going to tear her limb from limb, he said darkly. Harry had no doubt that he was talking about Umbridge. Ah, I was thinking the same thing, Harry said. He lay back in his bed and took off his glasses. I'm going to do it slowly. I'll make sure it hurts a lot, Ron said. Then he paused. How's Ginny holding up? She's doing all right, Harry said. Shook up about Hallwell and Gareth. She said she's going to write in the diary again tomorrow. I can't believe I'm saying this, Ron said, since she'll be in danger and all, but I hope it happens tomorrow. What if someone's killed next time? I know, Harry said. The thought still made icy fear flood his belly. Instead, it was 3 days later, just as Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville left the Transfiguration classroom, their last class of the day. The coin in his pocket burst with heat. Harry exchanged glances with Ron. He had a feeling, although he did not know for sure, that this was it. Damn! Ron slapped his hand to his forehead. We've got to go. Snape will kill us. Harry gaped at him. Oh, our detention. Sorry, they said in unison to their bewildered friends, and sped off. As they turned the corner, they heard Hermione say, "They've got detention again? They must be in a hurry," Neville said. "They're going the wrong way to the dungeons." Harry and Ron walked quickly and found an empty classroom. Harry pulled out his invisibility cloak and, checking to make sure the coast was clear, threw it over himself and Ron. They hurried in and closed the door. He pulled out his wand and whispered Expecto Patronum, and a stag appeared in front of them. Tell Dumbledore this. In classroom near Transfiguration. It took Dumbledore 15 minutes to reach them. It felt like 20 years. I think this is it, Harry told him. Ginny was writing in it. She usually only takes about 3 minutes. But the coin is still hot. Either he's taken her down there to lure me, or he's going to unleash the basilisk. We're still going to have to wait, Dumbledore said. I taught it last time, you know. It took the basilisk almost an hour to appear in the corridor. I'll set the spell so that if it makes an appearance, we will know that this is not the time. And no, he continued when Harry opened his mouth, we will ensure that this is, in fact, the time before you two run off. Fine, Harry said. They sat back as Dumbledore waved his wand. Cassin Sentia, he said, and a brilliant white light streamed from his wand and went straight through the walls. That will alert me of anything bigger than a human in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, he explained. Then Protego Horribilis, he said, and a great wind stirred up around them. It too fled. I'm not taking chances again, he said grimly. I've effectively stopped anything from getting out of that bathroom and getting in. I've also blocked off the corridor around it, 15 meters from the door. Once we have confirmation, I will take it down so you can go. All students return to your dormitories at once. 20 minutes later, McGonagall's voice startled Harry so much that he toppled off the desk upon which he sat. All students return to your dormitories at once. Prefects ensure that they do so. This is it, Harry said quietly. Finally, she said that the last time, but I don't know how she knew already. Very well, Dumbledore said. He gazed down at Harry and Ron, and then let his eyes linger on Harry. He opened his mouth to speak, but closed it again. Good luck, he said finally. They almost literally ran into Minerva McGonagall the moment they sped out of the room. Ron, who was fastest, threw himself to the side to avoid her and crashed into the wall instead. She looked quite worried, Harry saw. Wispy tendrils fell around her face where her hair had fallen out of her ever-present bun, and her mouth was not pressed into a firm line, but was slightly parted. Her eyes were filled with concern. Albus, she cried, as soon as she saw Dumbledore. The worst has happened. A student has been taken into the Chamber of Secrets. Who? Dumbledore asked sharply. Her eyes darted from Ron to Harry. Ginny Weasley, she said in a low voice. My sister, Ron shouted, but McGonagall continued. I was walking with a student when I saw Ginny Weasley walk into that bathroom none of the girls want to go into, the one that is haunted by Moaning Myrtle. I thought it was odd, but then I saw that there was a new message written on the wall. Her skeleton will remain in the chamber forever. Albus, this is the end of the school, I fear. Minerva, listen to me, Dumbledore said urgently. She ignored him. I ran into Gilderoy. He says he'll retrieve her, but I sincerely doubt that. He'll be in his office, getting ready to flee. What are we going to do? Whatever the monster is, it made it so I couldn't even try to follow. I was pushed back. Minerva, alert the Weasleys, Dumbledore interrupted, and go to my office. I will meet you there. Tell them to come immediately. She nodded. Then, remembering herself, she turned on Harry and Ron. Get back to your dormitories. Now, her voice softened. Mr. Weasley, we'll do everything we can. Harry and Ron did not need to hear another word, but left. Harry turned back once and saw such a look of helplessness on her face that he longed to tell her not to worry. He'd bring Ginny back and defeat the basilisk. Instead, he followed Ron. As soon as they rounded the corner, They both began sprinting. Harry did not remember drawing his wand, but it was out, and he grasped it firmly. Hogwarts had never seemed larger. They went down the stairs 3 at a time. Had there been any other students about, there would have been injuries, he was sure. They set off down the 3rd-floor corridor near the hospital wing and the defense classes. The halls were still, mercifully, empty. "Harry! Ron!" Neville shouted. Harry ran right into Ron when he slowed, and they both fell hard, smacking the stones. "Neville," he said. Neville's face was bright red and sweaty, as if he too had been running. "I've been looking." Neville bent over and gasped for breath. "For you ever since. Ginny, she's been taken. I saw it. The monster took her." "We know," Harry and Ron said at once. "We're going to rescue her," Harry told him. "Don't worry." "But—" "No time, Neville," Ron bellowed. "We know where it's taken her." "Let me come with you," Neville said at once, as he clutched a stitch in his side. "No," Ron shouted. "Don't worry. We won't let anything happen. I care about Ginny too," Neville shouted. Harry stared at him, stunned. He didn't think he'd ever seen Neville truly angry before. Not now, and not then. His face was almost purple, and his fists were clenched, as if he were about to start throwing punches. "Neville," Ron began. "Don't Neville me." He turned on Harry and pointed at him. Harry couldn't help but flinch. "Isn't this why you've been helping us? So we can make a difference?" Harry didn't bother trying to deny it. Neville had expressed these same sentiments when Harry had tried to talk him out of coming to the Department of Mysteries with him. He'd been right then, and if Harry and Ron had not traveled from the future, he'd be right now. He looked at Ron pleadingly. Or was it just a lie? Neville asked. Behind the anger, Harry saw a deep reservoir of hurt and insecurity. If he continued to refuse Neville, if he and Ron walked away from him, something would break inside him. Perhaps not their friendship, but the small bit of confidence that Neville had gained from mastering several spells would be lost. They couldn't tell him that they knew what was happening, not without giving themselves away. Harry really only had one choice. "All right," Harry said quietly. "What?" Ron said blankly. Harry shook his head at him. "Neville's right," he said. "He cares about Ginny, too. You should come with us." They marched on in silence. Harry kept jerking at small sounds, expecting Hermione and Luna to pop out from behind a door, or a tapestry, or a suit of armor and demand to go with them. He thought very quickly. Ron can keep him occupied, he thought. I can go on ahead, and Ron can stop Neville from following. Somehow, do you really know where the Chamber of Secrets is? Neville asked hesitantly. Yeah, Ron said roughly. It's in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Isn't that a girl's bathroom? Neville asked. If Harry had not been so petrified that something would go wrong, he may have laughed. Neville sounded more horrified about going into a girl's bathroom than meeting a basilisk, although he didn't know it was a basilisk that they would be facing. There's a basilisk in there, Harry said. Do you know what that is? When Neville shook his head, Ron said, it's a giant snake that can kill people with its eyes. And its fangs are poisonous too. Ron said this very harshly, and Harry could tell that he was trying to get Neville to back out while he still could. Waste of an effort, Harry thought. Neville's not a coward. How did you figure this out? It's a snake, Harry said quietly. I can hear it. That's what that voice I've been hearing is. It's been moving around in the pipes. That's why no one can see it. But how do you know it's a basilisk? Neville pressed. Ron said. We overheard Dumbledore talking to McGonagall. He was listing all the things that could have done it. And I know what a basilisk is, and then I realized that if Harry has been hearing it, then a snake is the best bet. Ron's nerves were interfering with his ability to lie, and Harry was glad when he stopped talking. Thankfully, Neville did not have any more questions. Terrible images of Ginny lying as still as death on the dirty floor of the Chamber of Secrets kept popping up behind his eyes. His heart was in danger of leaping out of his chest. Professor Lockhart, Neville said loudly. Ron groaned. Neville, look, he's leaving, Neville said indignantly. He's supposed to be helping Ginny, too. He's got his trunk. There was no chance at all that they were going to avoid this. Lockhart was less than 10 feet away and staring at them with shock. His face was pale, and his usually perfectly tended hair was mussed. His eyes were wild, and all he seemed capable of was staring at them. He had dropped his overflowing trunk onto his foot, and he had not even noticed. Ron sighed. "What the hell are you doing, Lockhart?" he asked. "Aren't you supposed to be helping my sister?" "Urgent business, got to run," he said weakly. "You're the defense against the dark arts teacher," Neville said. "You told the other professors that you were going to help. You don't understand." Harry drew his wand. "I understand perfectly. You're a fraud." Lockhart twitched, reaching for his wand. "Expelliarmus." "You're coming with us," Ron said roughly, pocketing Lockhart's wand after catching it. "You can leave your trunk here. I'm sure you'll need it when you're sacked. Good thing it's packed already." It's not that bad that he's here again, Harry thought when they finally reached the corridor. He felt a faint twinge of unease. He shook his head. Stay focused on Ginny, the diary, and the basilisk. It took them another 5 minutes to reach the end of the corridor. Harry could see the doors that led to the bathroom and the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. They were closed. "The monster," Neville said nervously. It made it so McGonagall couldn't follow Ginny. She just bounced right off it. "We'll try anyway," Ron said harshly. Dumbledore had already taken down his enchantment. He must have expected that Ron and Harry had already reached it. He had obviously not expected that they had picked up 2 others. Harry narrowed his eyes and stared at Lockhart. "Come on, Harry." He shook his head sharply and moved on. Neville walked with his hand out, obviously expecting to be pushed back at any moment. Lockhart kept whimpering and muttering things under his breath that Harry did not particularly want to hear. Ron pulled open the door and, wand still pointed at Lockhart, ushered them in. Harry looked around the familiar room. It was dingy and poorly lit and smelled faintly of something unpleasant, just as he'd remembered. "Where do you reckon it is?" Harry asked Ron. "You said you knew," Neville accused. "We know it's in this bathroom, but we haven't quite figured out where." Harry lied. He pretended to think. "If it's going through the pipes." Lockhart said in a faint voice. Ron jabbed his wand at him. "Shut up," he growled, then looked at Harry. "Maybe over by the sink? If it isn't there, we can check the toilets." Harry nodded. He made a cursory examination of the sinks, ignoring the fact that Moaning Myrtle had joined them. "You're not supposed to be here," she said in a sing-song voice. "This is a girl's bathroom." Neville muttered his agreement. "Found it," Harry said when he had taken enough time looking for the small snake that decorated the tap on one of the sinks. "Look, it looks like a snake. Reckon I should use Parseltongue." He gritted his teeth. He glanced over at Neville, who looked very pale. "You don't have to come, Neville," he pointed out. "I'm coming." Neville tried to say it firmly, but it came out as a question. Then, when Ron opened his mouth, he said, "I'm coming." "Open," Harry said. All 4 watched in silence as the sink moved away, revealing the large mouth of a pipe that looked like a maw, waiting to swallow them and enclose them in darkness. "You first," Ron said to Lockhart. "Isn't necessary, boys." Lockhart quivered. When Harry raised his wand, and a split second later, Neville did, he swallowed. With a moan, he jumped in and disappeared. "I'll go next," Ron said. "Don't want him to get into trouble down there." "I'll go," Neville said. He took a deep breath and followed Ron. Harry could hear him scream all the way down. Once he heard voices echoing oddly up through the pipe, he climbed in and slid. His robes were caked in slime and filth, and Harry had to breathe through his mouth for several moments. The faint, unpleasant smell in the bathroom was nothing compared to the stench. He'd forgotten. "Ugh," Lockhart said. "What is that awful smell?" "The basilisk," Ron said casually. "Not only can it kill you if it looks you in the eye, it smells too." Lockhart whimpered. "Lumos," Harry whispered, and his wand immediately lit up. It cast an eerie light that shimmered on the wet walls. "I'd think we're under the lake," Neville said. Harry marched forward toward the tunnel. "Maybe we can pretend that only I can go forward once we reach that other door," he thought. Or, Neville screamed, and Harry whipped around. He and Lockhart both had their hands pressed tightly over their eyes. Harry turned around again and saw the skin that the basilisk had shed. It covered the entire path. They would have to step over it. But wait. He heard Lockhart's knees hit the ground and scrape against the bones of the small animals that littered the tunnel. It's just Lockhart, he thought, but that feeling of unease had grown. His heart thumped. and his instincts were on full alert. Suddenly, with a rush of understanding, he spun around. "Ron, your wand," he shouted. He saw Ron's shocked face in the light that came from his wand, but it was Neville who cried out. "Obliviate!" Harry was simply too slow. He tried to dodge it, to throw himself out of the way, but the bright white light of the memory charm hit him full on the face. He could feel it seeping into his brain. "No, no, no," he heard his own voice say. He put his hands over his head, trying to protect it, but it was too late. The memories flickered past his closed eyelids, and he could only feel horror and impotent rage. The chamber, Tom Riddle, the diary, Ginny lying as though dead on the floor, the sword they slipped away. He couldn't hold the memories in, and in a second they were gone.